Hello class, welcome back. Today we're talking about team interventions. Remember that we've already talked about having a holistic intervention strategy. We've talked about individual level interventions. Today we're talking about team level interventions. Next week we'll talk about whole organization interventions. And each of these different categories of interventions have different things that you can do that might be specific activities within a holistic intervention strategy. So while we're going to talk just about team interventions today, I don't want you to necessarily think about this in isolation to the other types of interventions. In fact, you can pair up different activities and different intervention components from each of the three broad buckets of individual, team, and whole organization interventions to make out your whole intervention strategy for an organization. And it's been my experience that typically when you can find elements from each of the areas, you have a bit more of a stable intervention strategy. Think about it like the three legs of a stool. Just one leg or just two legs, it's wobbly, it's insecure. You add that third leg, and now you have triangulation of different efforts. You have reinforcement of key different areas of the organization. So I think those are all things important to think about. But today we're going to focus on team interventions. And to start you thinking, I wanted to just share this, think, pair, share. You'll have an opportunity to share in the discussion this week about this topic. But think about and name a few teams to which you've belonged. Would you consider them good experiences? What made them good experiences or poor ones? How did the team members recognize and act on their interdependence? What interventions might have been useful in those teams and why? So when you've had great teams, why were they great? When you had bad teams, what went wrong? What interventions could be put in place to try to reform that team and make sure that it's moving forward in an effective manner? These are the types of questions I want you to consider from your own experience, and hopefully that will shape how you're thinking about what I present here in the coming minutes. Another question, what is most important to you when you join a new team? How would you structure a team startup meeting to help a leader initiate a new team? How would you use the team startup intervention for a new cross-functional team, a new self-managed team, or a new virtual team? So later on in the slide deck, there are materials on having a team startup meeting as a resource. I'm not going to go through all of those in this video, but that's a really important resource and one that I would encourage you to think about both with your current team, even though you're halfway through the semester, or with future teams that you're involved with at school or at work. How can you structure that first team startup meeting and the elements that will help you to be successful? And consider your project in this class. You're doing a project that in some cases might be considered cross-functional, not that you're in different functions within an organization, but you're different diverse students that have come together in a class for a project where you have different backgrounds, different experiences, probably different expertises, different areas of expertise. And so in some ways there's some similarities there. You're definitely functioning as a self-managed team, and you're largely functioning as a virtual team for this class. So be thinking about, what's gone well for you so far this semester, what hasn't gone so well, what are things that you could do to improve, and there's still half the semester left to put in place a lot of those improvements as you finish off this experience in this class, and certainly as you go into future experiences. Now, some things to think about in terms of effective teams. Generally speaking, I think these are principles that apply in most team situations. You have a clear, elevating goal, something that is beyond just your own self-interest, something that's beyond, just checking your box, stroking your own ego, just getting things done that will benefit you and your career, or even the team. When you're driven solely by accomplishment, ego, self-interest, generally speaking, those sorts of motivations aren't going to be as sustaining as when you have a clear, elevating goal. My hope is in this class that given the real life project you're working on with an organization that truly needs your help, where they're influencing other populations that are in need, that I'm hoping you have a sense of a clear elevating goal. Hopefully that wasn't a hard thing to establish within your team. A results-driven structure. So you need to have a results-driven mindset. You need to have a structure in place that can allow for accountability, so that people know that they have to contribute and that they're expected to contribute high level in terms of quality and quantity of work and their own expertise. You need to have competent members. Now, granted, in any actual team setting, whether it's at work or at school, a lot of times you don't get to choose who's on your team. In this class, you largely have been able to self-select into teams you're interested in, but most of the time in the real world, you have no voice or choice in what your team makeup is. You're put on a team, you're assigned a task or a project, and you just have to do it. And it doesn't really matter if you get along or you like them. It doesn't really matter if you find them annoying. What matters is that you just have to move forward. But that said, effective teams will have competency within the team. You'll have competent members. That doesn't mean you're all the same. That doesn't mean you'll have the same personality or that you even like or enjoy each other's company. But it means you have to learn to recognize each other's strengths and competencies, and you have to learn how to leverage those competencies. There needs to be a unified commitment. In the workplace setting, it's your job. You want to keep your job. You want to be successful in your job. You want to move forward in your career. Those are all good things. In school, you want to be successful in your academic pursuits. You want to get a good grade. You want to prepare yourself for your future work experiences. Those are all good things. So having a unified commitment in terms of your own goals is good. But as we talked about above, with a clear elevating goal, you also want to try to have some overarching commitment that maybe even gets past those self-interested areas, and something that's unifying, something that helps bring everyone together, where everyone can say, yes, I'm going to do this. And I think about even in this class, there are some students in this class who, frankly, on the individual components, on the weekly assignments, the things that they're doing on their own, they aren't putting tons of effort into it. They don't really care all that much. They're just kind of skating by, doing the bare minimum. There's many students who are doing tremendously well on all the individual aspects of the class as well. But what's interesting to me, and what usually happens, is once we get into our teams, even those students who maybe don't care so much on the individual stuff, when they find themselves in the team, at that point, they're putting more effort in. They're more committed. They understand that they're representing not just themselves, but the other members of their team. And so that gives them a heightened sense of purpose, of motivation, of accountability, those sorts of things. And so that shared unified commitment can be really powerful. So think about how you can implement that within teams, whether it's organizations you're working with or teams that you're a part of. There needs to be some sort of a collaborative climate within the team, meaning people are willing to share. They're open. It's safe to share. That people don't feel railroaded into a certain perspective, that people understand that they need to contribute, but also when they contribute, that those contributions will be valued, that they'll be heard out, those sorts of things. There's lots of ways to quickly shut down collaborative and partnership-based culture or climate within an organization. And to build it, you really have to just build trust amongst the members of your team. Standards of excellence. I think this is really important. It comes back to elevating goal and unified commitment, having competent members, but you want to strive for excellence in your outcomes for the organization. If you're part of a team and you're trying to produce something, you want to be excellent. If you're a OD consultant and you're trying to help other teams be more successful, you want to help inspire them to strive for excellence. There also needs to be external support and recognition. So if you're tasked with some sort of a team-based project within an organization where you work, but there's no actual resources to get it done, you don't actually have support from upper management, it's going to be really hard for that team to be effective, to move forward in a positive manner. So there needs to be elements of external support and recognition for the accomplishments of the team. And then there needs to be principled leadership. Now, this doesn't mean that there needs to be one team leader. In fact, in self-managed work teams, there's usually not a designated team leader. You have everyone collaboratively working together to bring about good outcomes. But there can still be principled leadership amongst the self-managed work team. And you need to treat other people with dignity and respect within the team. Now, in terms of team interventions and what you see more in the readings this week and some of the videos, there's lots of different things you can do. And as you go through these slides, I'm not going to cover all of it in the video, but there are some resources and some key questions and some key elements that you should consider, both for your own teams as well as other teams that you're trying to help. So any projects in this class where you're doing anything team-based, I would encourage you to consider some of these recommendations, some of these talking points, some of the key questions. One of those is team startup or transition meetings. You want to make sure that teams start off on the right foot. So there's a lot of resources in the slide deck on that. Sometimes you need to have confrontation meetings. Sometimes things aren't going well. They're not going to plan. There's people that aren't contributing. There's miscommunication or misunderstandings. Those sorts of things happen a lot. And it's not uncommon. So sometimes you have to have interventions that just bring people together where you can confront people on their biases, their stereotypes, their misconceptions, try to help build some trust, those sorts of elements. Sometimes there's role negotiation and role analysis. Different team members can play different roles, and sometimes those roles are effectively managed. Sometimes people kind of naturally just trade off between them. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes you have to step back, renegotiate people's roles, and figure out where they are. In relation to that work redesign, sometimes simply doing a job analysis, doing a task inventory, trying to understand who's doing what and why and how, understanding those questions and how an individual's work and how it's designed influences how the rest of the team works together and how it's designed. So you have to take a step back and think structurally and strategically about those elements of the job. Workout, which also can be a whole organization intervention, is a process where you can work through some difficult challenges that are faced within the organization. Appreciative inquiry also can be a whole organization intervention where you just have an opportunity to make sure that people feel valued and that they have an opportunity to contribute in meaningful ways. You can show appreciation, but you can also look into what's not going well and find ways to proactively move forward. So think about an experience that you might have had with different types of role conflict that were described in the readings or the videos this week. What do you think you could do to resolve that conflict? That's something you can discuss in the discussion board this week. And again, team conflict and role conflict, these are normal. Like, they happen in most organizations, in most teams, with most individuals at different points in time. So if you are lucky enough to get through a team project without any sort of conflict, that's a rarity. There's usually stuff that happens. And so you have to be able to take a step back. You have to look at what you're doing, why it happened. You have to find a way to move forward in a positive way without throwing people under the bus, where you can help, where you can maintain trust, where you can maintain commitment within the team while also acknowledging the challenges and not just sticking your head in the sand and glossing over the frustrations or the things that are making it ineffective. So think carefully about conflict and how you're working towards resolving conflict. And I've shared some resources related to your team projects about conflict, common problems that emerge within teams and responses to those sorts of things. I think are really important, and you can continue to consider. As you go through the rest of the slides, you'll see things like the team startup or transition kit, which is really important. Process for using the startup kit. An example agenda of that first meeting, the types of problems that teams typically face in their first meetings, and in that storming phase of trying to start as a new team, the goals of starting a new team, and what we're trying to accomplish in the meeting, and so forth. There's more slides, more resources, and I hope that you'll utilize those as you continue on in this semester with this team, as well as other team-based projects you do at school and in the workplace. So thank you and have a great week.